The economy is booming, right? The S&P 500 is up 17%. Unemployment is at historic lows. Consumer confidence is through the roof. So why does it feel like you're being left behind? Here's the truth no one is talking about. Half the economy is controlled by just 10% of the people. That's not a statistic, that's a confession. It means when the experts talk about the strong economy, they're not talking about your economy. They're talking about theirs. The wealthy are still spending, but for most of us, we're just trying to keep up. The numbers you're seeing on the news, they're only measuring the success of the top, not the rest of us. So when was the last time you heard the media mention that the richest Americans control half of what's happening in the economy? Stay with me, because what I'm about to reveal will change everything you thought you knew about how the economy really works. Now, here's the kicker. The strong economy everyone is cheering about isn't the same one you're living in. It's the economy of the top 10%. And here's how we got here. The truth is, when the Federal Reserve printed trillions of dollars, those dollars didn't flow to you. They didn't go into your bank account. They went straight into the hands of the ultra-wealthy. Stocks skyrocketed. Real estate prices soared. The portfolios of the rich swelled. And the rest of us? We saw our wages stagnate while the cost of living rose, but it gets worse. The bottom 50% of Americans control only 2.5% of the nation's wealth. Let that sink in. That means half of the country owns almost nothing, while the wealthiest 1% control nearly 30% of everything. Yeah, this isn't some far-off prediction. This is today. This is the reality you're living in. And here's what's not being said. When they talk about a rising tide in the economy, what they really mean is that the rich are getting richer and everyone else is being left to drown. The system is rigged and it's designed to keep you in the dark about how it really works. So who benefits from this? The wealthy, of course. They sit at the top, their money working for them, while your labor continues to lose value. Why? Because the game was set up this way from the start. And it's only going to get worse. Stick around, because I'm about to show you how deep this rabbit hole goes. Let's break this down even further. When the economy booms, who really wins? It's not you. It's not your neighbors. It's the top 1%. They control 80% of the stock market. Let that hit you. 80% of the stock market is owned by just 10% of the people. So when CNBC celebrates the latest stock market highs, guess who benefits? Not the average worker. They're out of the game. The stock market is just a scoreboard for the rich. Meanwhile, the rest of us, we're stuck in the real world where wages are stagnant, housing prices are out of control, and rent keeps rising thanks to a little thing called RealPage. Ever heard of it? Probably not, but you should have. RealPage is a software company that sets rents across the country by using an algorithm. That's right. Landlords across America are not just competing for tenants. They're feeding their pricing data into a shared system that colludes to keep rents high. Even when there's a surplus of apartments, even when nobody's renting, rents keep going up because the algorithm tells them to. This isn't a conspiracy theory. The Department of Justice sued RealPage for price fixing in 2024. And yet, guess what? They didn't have to pay a single dime in damages, no admission of wrongdoing. And by the time the laws changed in California and New York, the damage was already done. Hundreds of thousands of families had already been crushed under the weight of higher rents. Want to know the worst part? The 50% at the bottom of the economy, they don't own stocks. They don't benefit from the market boom. They're stuck paying more for everything, while their wages don't even come close to keeping up. So when you see those headlines celebrating rising asset prices, just remember, they're not talking about you. You didn't see any of that wealth. You didn't see a rise in wages. You didn't see any real benefit. It's all just smoke and mirrors. But let's zoom out for a second. What happens when things go wrong in your life? When a medical emergency hits or a job is lost? For the bottom half of America, it's not just a minor inconvenience. It's a life-altering crisis. They don't have a safety net. And the middle class, they're barely hanging on. Many are one unexpected bill away from slipping down the ladder. Now, think about this. The middle class is shrinking. In 1971, over 60% of Americans were middle class. By 2023, that number was down to just 51%. The middle class is hollowing out, and those who still identify as middle class are now facing pressures they've never experienced before. The anxiety is real. The fear of losing it all, of falling into the pit below, is gnawing at them. And yet, They still hold on to the idea of American stability, even as it's slipping away. They own homes, yes. They have retirement accounts, yes. But they're house poor, stuck in mortgages they can't escape because the interest rates have doubled. They can't move to a better job in another city because they can't afford to sell and buy in this new inflated market. They're trapped. They might seem okay on the outside, but inside they're terrified that one job loss, one bad break, could send them tumbling into the same hole they're watching the working class fall into. It's the same fear, but from a different position. But there's a trick most people don't see coming. The government knows all this. They know about the rising inequality, the shrinking middle class, and the pressure on the working poor. So in 2025, they passed something called the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, better known as the OBBBA. Sounds good, right? The big headline, no tax on tips. Workers in service industries were finally going to get some relief. But hold on, let's break it down. The maximum tax break for a server making $30,000 a year is about $400 a year. For most workers, it's even less. That's a $400 saving on a $30,000 income, maybe $50 a month. But here's the twist. 1/3 of tipped workers don't pay federal income tax at all because their income falls below the standard deduction threshold. So they get nothing, zip, zero. Meanwhile, that same bill made permanent the 2017 corporate tax cuts, the ones that slashed the corporate rate from 35% to 21%. This isn't a small tax break. It cost $4 trillion over 10 years. To put that in perspective, for every dollar that went to helping tipped workers, $125 went to corporate tax cuts. The headline was for the workers, but the money went straight to corporate shareholders. This is how it works. The system is set up so that when the headlines promise to help you, the money never reaches you. It goes straight into the pockets of those who already own everything. Now let's talk about the true scale of the problem. We've seen how the rich benefit from tax cuts and asset appreciation, but the real issue lies in how they shield their wealth. The wealthiest 1% don't just own assets, they protect them in ways most people can't even imagine. They don't pay taxes the way you do. In fact, many of them pay almost nothing. How? It's a simple trick called buy, borrow, die. Step 1, buy. The ultra-wealthy accumulate assets. Stocks, real estate, art, anything that appreciates. Their wealth compounds tax-free year after year because unrealized gains are not taxed. This means they can accumulate billions in wealth without ever paying taxes on it. But here's the catch. They never sell these assets. Step 2, borrow. Instead of selling assets and paying taxes, they borrow against them. They take out loans using their stock portfolio or real estate as collateral. The bank gives them billions at 1% to 2% interest, and guess what? The money they borrow isn't taxed as income, so they get billions of dollars, pay a tiny interest fee, and the IRS sees nothing. Step 3, die. When these billionaires pass away, their heirs inherit their assets, but here's the kicker. All those unrealized gains are wiped clean. They inherit the wealth at its new value, and if they sell it, they pay zero capital gains tax. It's perfectly legal, but that's the point. It's not just a loophole, it's a system designed for them. The rich have figured out how to escape the rules while you're left playing by them, but it gets worse. The real danger is what happens when the system fails. We're building an economy that's not just unequal, but unstable. Think back to the 2008 financial crisis. It wasn't just a random event. It was inevitable. When wages stagnate and people are forced to take on massive debt just to maintain a semblance of middle-class life, the system starts to collapse under its own weight. And now we're seeing the same signs again. The stock market is soaring, but for most Americans, consumer demand, the lifeblood of the economy, is drying up. Half of the economy depends on just the top 10% of spenders. What happens when those spenders pull back, when the stock market crashes, when real estate prices fall, when the wealthy stop buying luxury goods? That the economy won't just slow down, it will collapse. The truth is we're riding a house of cards, and when it falls, it's not just the poor who will suffer. The whole system will crash, and everyone from the middle class to the top will feel the tremors. That's the real risk. But the wealthy are insulated. They can afford to weather the storm. The rest of us, we're left exposed, drowning in debt, while the rich move their wealth out of reach. Now let's talk about the human cost. This isn't just an economic issue, it's a human issue. We see the numbers, we see the charts, but behind every statistic is a person. The poorest 1% of Americans live, on average, 14.6 years less than the richest 1%. That's not just a gap in wealth, that's a gap in life itself. For women, the gap is 10.1 years. And it's getting worse. Over the last 15 years, the richest Americans have gained 3 extra years of life expectancy, while the poorest have seen no improvement at all. This isn't just a coincidence. It's a direct result of inequality. It's not just about money. It's about access to health care, clean air, nutritious food, and safe living conditions. It's about the ability to take a day off without fear of losing your job or your home. And the worst part? The poorest Americans are dying of despair. Suicides, overdoses, alcohol-related deaths, these are concentrated in communities where people feel left behind, where they see no future. This isn't just a side effect of inequality, it's a direct consequence. Inequality isn't just unfair, it's lethal. But here's the most dangerous part of all, political risk. Inequality isn't just a financial issue, it's a threat to democracy itself. A study published in January 2025 found that economic inequality is one of the strongest predictors of democratic erosion. Let me say that again. The more unequal a society becomes, the more likely it is to elect leaders who exploit that inequality for power. It's happening right now. The gap between the rich and the poor has led to a growing sense of grievance. And that's exactly what populist leaders exploit. Left-wing populists blame corporations, right-wing populists blame immigrants, but both are feeding off the same underlying rot, a system that works for the few but not for the many. The study shows that older democracies are not immune to this. Age doesn't protect a democracy, inequality does. The U.S. is a perfect example. Our Gini coefficient, the measure of income inequality, currently stands at 0.48, the highest it's been in over 60 years. That's higher than most developed countries, and it's climbing. Here's the problem. As people start to see that their votes don't matter, that billionaires' donations influence every policy decision, they stop believing in democracy. They stop believing in the system. That's when things get dangerous. That's when they turn to outsiders, strong men, leaders who promise to tear it all down.